Hey guys, welcome back to another amazing video. Today we are talking about Marvel Tokon. Alright, the last time we made a video, which you guys can check out earlier, was when we had the last closed beta. This time we participated in the open beta that happened throughout this weekend. Now, I really want to make it clear here that this video is more so about my experience, what I feel about the game, and I hope you guys can respect that. Alright, I really want to make it also clear too that many of the feedback and opinions that I have about the game is more so about, again, feedback, constructive criticism, and not actually trashing the game. And I would prefer that if you guys are going to come into the comments, we keep it clean, we keep our opinions honest, but we also, again, keep it clean. Starting off, what I really want to talk first about is some of the good stuff about the game. So first and foremost, everything about this game is gorgeous. This almost feels like a love letter to Marvel and its superhero IP. And honestly, it can tell, right? From the beginning, when you go into just how it has kind of like that My Hero Academia feel, but with just Marvel characters, to the music and every character's theme, as well as all of the cool stages, having so many Easter eggs. Again, like, this just feels and it's dripping with love to the Marvel IP. I think one of my favorite things that I found while I was playing in the beta was the open lobby system actually going to Valhalla and Asgard. Like, you were literally in that area, you could go into different portions, and that opened up more areas for more stations. And then as you went further down that rainbow road, you got to see actually Thor and Freya and the rest of the crew. I think that that's really cool. I think that, again, there's just so much to explore. I feel like the story is going to be amazing too, especially with that comic book style that the game is really spotting on. And the episodes that are going to be featured in those stories is going to be something that I feel like it really makes it unique. The last time we've had something like this, as far as the Marvel IP goes, has been Marvel Rivals, right? Marvel Rivals as a game is also a love letter to the IP, because there's just so many things that are calling out to Marvel, to what these characters have gone through, to their unique origin points, but then at the same time being able to just see it and actually experience it, and still having its own unique flavor, right? Like, it's its own unique source. And I think that that's something that Marvel Tokon really shines bright on. I do want to mention too, everybody sounds amazing. I think there was only one gripe I had, which was Ghost Rider. But the cool thing is that you can actually go ahead and change languages on every single character. That's really huge, especially when we come from Grand Blue, where I don't know if you guys remember about that quote unquote bug where you had to face your opponent and they actually were in English, but your characters were in Japanese, and vice versa if they had selected that. So kind of being able to see that that is not the case here, but instead that you can select the language that certain characters can be. I think that was really cool, especially when I switched to Ghost Rider to Spanish. I think, again, my only complaint about it was that he was saying like car instead of carro, which is like hello. That's like, why are we speaking Spanglish here? I'm guilty of also doing Spanish or Spanglish. But anyways, I think it's really cool. I think everything about it just screams, again, love to it. Everybody sounds amazing, whether it's Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Spanish, and many more of the options that are inside the game. Again, that's one of the coolest things that I think that ArcSys should continue to do. I know obviously trying to hire voice actors can be a little bit expensive, but I think it really, really shows off the best. Now, that was mostly for the good. Let's actually talk about some of the things that made it a bit impossible to play the game on. Now, I really want to preface this portion of the video and say to you guys that this is what betas are for. Betas are mostly meant to stress test the game inside network conditions, as well as figure out if it does really well on platforms and see where exactly the majority of the users are coming from. I know a lot of people were complaining about the instability of the game, especially for PC and when the cross platform was happening. I want to make it clear and actually clarify a couple of things before we go into the rest of like the negative of the video, because I really think this is an opportunity for a lot of people who are like my viewers and you guys watching this video, that it's important for you guys to know about before we just dive into, hey, this game was bad, it ran horribly on PC. For starters, everybody knows that when a PC, or rather when a fighting game comes out on the PC, the first thing that people love to do is data mine or try to create a quote-unquote cracked version. Obviously, being that this is a PlayStation IP and this is also a very beloved IP, well, they went ahead and went through the rings of encryption that have made the install of the game heavy with it. Now I'm talking like if you were able to get the game to download on your computer installed, what came with it was an actual PlayStation component that allowed you to be able to connect your PlayStation account, and then you would connect to the PSN servers. Because of that, a lot of computers could not handle that load. In fact, when we actually got to see some of the requirements for the game, a lot of what the game was requiring builds that were higher than the 3070s with GPUs. And as many members of the community kind of realized as they were playing, well, the game wasn't running really well on PC. In fact, a lot of people didn't really have the proper builds to actually run the game, and some of those builds could have been either 2 or 3 years old or probably 5-year plus olds, but running on really old GPUs. I want to make it clear that this doesn't excuse at the fact of the optimization. I think that there needs to be a very significant optimization for Marvel Tokon as far as when it comes to the PC platform. But as a rule of thumb that I've always said in streams, if you have a console, take advantage of it and use it on the console. I think it's really important that when PlayStation or even Xbox promotes and backs a game, regardless of the IP, regardless of what the game is releasing on the platform, if that game has been featured into their showcases and has been heavily promoted as a PlayStation or an Xbox game, you are better off purchasing that game on launch on console rather than having to go through the trials and tribulations of PC. Does that excuse the instability that was experienced during the beta? No, but I will tell you that if you're trying to have a smooth experience when you play this game on launch, you should follow that rule of thumb. It'll save you a lot of headaches, and then when the time comes, you can always purchase it on PC later when it's on sale, or if you really prefer PC. The other thing I also want to mention too is that even though the optimizations could have been the reason behind many of the rollback issues, the actual connections online during this beta test, that's what betas are for. They're gonna be laggy, they're gonna be troublesome, they're not gonna be perfect. But what the biggest thing that you want to make sure of is when you are filling out that survey, you are honest about those connections and you clarify and be transparent. Hey, this person was on Wi-Fi and I was experiencing a lot of lag. I was playing against this person who was wired and I was still seeing a lot of lag, and they're not far from me. If you played them, of course, and you know them. I think it's really important that when we talk about these issues, we understand and we take note of what exactly happened as constructive feedback for them, but we don't take it so personal, because again, that's what these betas are for, right? These betas are here to actually stress test these games and actually observe that they're not functioning or those potential features need to be improved on before the release of the game. I know a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to have to do a lot of work on the netcode. To be honest, again, that's why they have these beta tests right before they launch, because it's part of their development plan to QA that and actually work on that. Games, or rather working on games and developing games, it's all about the project pipeline. And trust when projects go through, there's a lot of thinking and project management involved. Now that we cleared some of the more major stuff, let's talk about the real negative things that I think this game actually needs to be looked at and worked on. Again, this is something that I feel is more personal, and maybe you guys could have different opinions, but I really want to start off this section by saying this game is not a tag fighting game. I know you're probably like, but Saki, don't you mean that it is because it has tag fighting? Well, yeah, but it just feels like a watered down version. What I mean by that is, and mind you, most of the tag games I've been playing has been 2XKO. I think I played Power Rangers once in the Blue Moon, and I've seen Skullgirls. That's about it. And the other closest tag game or tag-based assist fighter game that I've gone through was Mortal Kombat 1. But this game really takes tag fighting and really waters it down in a couple of ways. For starters, that 4-button layout really leads you into not a lot of creativity, number one. And number two, I think the reliance on auto combos in this game is pretty atrocious. What I mean by atrocious is I literally did not learn not one combo throughout this entire beta period. And that was simply because I asked myself, well, why would I want to do that? I have the neutral enough to play. I know more or less what I want to do because I can send out maybe a couple assists here and there and just tag through there. And I can just rely on link attacks, which are usually just spamming that triangle, triangle, triangle button or the medium button. Or light attacks if I want to take out the assemble and get my easy auto super. Regardless of that, I just felt like there was just no point in me wanting to actually learn and be creative if for whatever was happening on the screen, there was just no incentive. Yeah, you could have probably gotten more damage, which is something that was mentioned if you do not the simple moves, but actual special inputs, then you would get more damage and you probably get more resources. I still didn't see the difference, and that's kind of the thing that I have with Granblue. Granblue's the same way. There's no real inclination for me to actually learn combos if the results are still going to be the same as long as I have really good neutral and I just play for fun, casual, and just kind of call it a day. One thing I also want to highlight here too is that when we're sending out assists, that cooldown trying to actually tag back and forth, it's not an actual active tag, or rather an active tag that makes sense for me in my head. When trying to tag throughout the game and trying to tag to different characters, I would send out an assist and I wouldn't be able to tag until the cooldown or the actual button with a meter that goes down to see how long the assist stays on the screen appeared, and then I could tag. But if that assist got hit or I was still stuck in a block string, I would have still not been able to tag. I found that so frustrating because I'm used to being able to throw out assists, then being able to go ahead and tag to that character, create really cool mix-ups, and then call it a day. I couldn't do any of that. Mind you, I did play characters that I felt like were pretty standard as far as like setup. So like you had Storm and she'd do her projectile, and then you had Blade where, you know, you could kind of like stagger and then throw out a projectile. But a perfect example of this was when I was playing Shuri. I would use her unique skill ability and then all of a sudden try to create some form of mix-up, and I just couldn't mix them. I wanted to so badly, but between not being able to actually active tag and then being able to actually like tag in, I was still trying to figure out how to open up people, and it just felt really bad. The pace of the game is really slow. Mind you, this is a better pace than the last closed beta that I played. And if you guys don't remember my thoughts on it, you guys can go back to that video again. Be more than happy to link it at the end of this video. So my biggest thing again is that like, I just felt like I couldn't be fast enough. Again, some of the characters felt pretty fast, but what I did feel like is it had the speed of Granblue, but not the speed of a tag fighter. A tag fighter, you gotta be like leaning forward, ready to go, figuring out what's happening, but it almost just felt like that wasn't the case here, and I really felt like it impacted me, and it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. The other thing that I really hated about this game is the defensive mechanic. So the defensive mechanic, I have dubbed it as like the reflect and deflex. It reminds me way too much of Wild Assault. The counters are very hard to call out. There was many times where I felt like a grab would have been easily been able to punish those callouts, but instead it was considered invincible, and then it was considered invisible, and then I actually had to hold that deflect counter. It didn't lead into a lot of damage. It was more used as a get off me tool, but it was still so frustrating playing against people that at those last rounds, we just kept getting hit by those deflect counters over and over again. And when I tried to actually call out the deflect counters with my own deflect assemble, it was just not clear and very confusing. Again, I really felt like this mechanic, it was its own version of Guilty Gear's Wild Assault and Deflect Shield, and there is a whole reason why Wild Assault was removed. It's not a good mechanic, much less a mechanic that's tied to a resource that you're constantly getting back. And then by the time you did get hit by that deflect, because you tried to say, hey, get off me, if your counter got countered, essentially, then you would not be able to use any of your assists. You pretty much enter a disassemble state. That's not ideal, because you're like, if your whole game plan just literally revolves around tagging and throwing out assists, which in this game you kind of need to, it's really hard. I also want to say too that in regards to just the characters themselves, there's a lot of BS some of these characters are going through. Magic's definitely one of the best characters. I don't think that's entirely a problem, but she has a huge hitbox and gets insane amount of damage for a very low risk, rather than having a high risk and high reward. Additionally as well, Goblins or Green Goblin's assist is like full screen and it's insane. I don't know how people were getting away with that, but they were, and it was just making the game super unfun in certain aspects. While I'm mentioning about some of the characters, I also want to highlight the fact that I just felt really bored about the game. As I was playing, I felt like, okay, I could play maybe an hour or two, and then I already wanted to hop off. I feel like the pacing of the match makes it really hard to enjoy, and to be honest, as soon as we were playing matches, you can tell that people were already picking it up and doing the same old combos, right? Again, there's no real incentive to be creative, and in addition to that, there's just no real incentive of really trying to push to the top. Yeah, you had a ranked match ready to go, but again, what's the point of grinding ranked if there's no real incentive for me to play the game at the very beginning? I played a couple of matches with friends, and again, that was fun. We had a good time, but it's not a game that I actually see myself saying, I want to hop on this and play 100 sets. Shoutouts to Avatar, because I actually did that the other night. Overall, as we're getting to the end of this video, I really want to say that while Marvel Tokon's beta was pretty fun in an essence of it, I still think that this game needs to figure out what it wants to be. It reminds me a lot of like how 2XKO is still trying to figure out what kind of tag fighter it wants to be, but I feel like for Marvel Tokon, it's at its initial stage where, to be honest, just take out tag. Let it become another Mortal Kombat 1 style game, but people are going to be happy about it because they're still going to be able to play the characters that they like, and the characters that are in assist modes, you can still play them if you want to. But take away tagging in general is one of my opinions and one thing I would suggest for the game. And if you do keep the tagging, make it faster, bring back the active tag. I know a lot of people were saying, oh, we don't want active tag, but I'll be honest, this game kind of needs it because it's just not playing the way that we would want it to play. Overall, will I purchase Marvel Tokon? I'll definitely be checking the game out and having it here and there, but I think this is one of those games that I might wait a little bit, looking forward to actually commentating it and watching it. Let me know what you guys think about the video, and feel free to check out my closed beta thoughts from the previous beta, and I will be seeing you guys in the next one. Bye, you!